Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. I hope you're having a great Friday. Of course, it's the beginning of the weekend, and I hope that my voice is finding you in a good place. Welcome back to the Hot Mic Podcast. I'm your humble host, Nathan Ivy, aka Nate the Barbarian. And for those who might be catching us for the first time, the Hot Mic Podcast is where divergent points of view debate and discuss hot topics. Today, we've got a great crew that we pulled together. Just one thing that I must tell you at the top of the show. Just got the word that our friend Kevin Gordon won't be able to join us today. I know people are sick about that because people hate to love Kevin Gordon, but you got Raven Mundy, Phil Heimlich, Kevin Aldridge, and of course myself, Nathan Ivy. And Raven will be with us shortly. She's taking care of her business, and she'll be with us as soon as she can. Fellas, welcome back to Hot Mic. And how was your Friday so far?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Let me turn you up just a little bit, Kevin. There you go. So far, so good. Great, great, great. So, listen, if you're in the audience right now, we're going to try to put up as much chat as possible. I see Kevin's in the house. What up, Kevin on the cell? Good afternoon, Team Hotness. Team Hotness. I don't know about that one. I don't think I like that.
I
I mean,
just want to say, I just want to say right now, I don't want to be looked at as an object. Okay, on this
right.
podcast.
Yeah,
I
hotness.
want to be respected for my mind too. Okay, just so we're
Exactly.
clear. All right,
Yeah, I agree with you. Off the top, I agree with
all
you. Hey,
all
but
right.
Kev, glad you're here, Kevin. Thank you so much. And let's get straight into it. Let's get straight. What's up, Nate? Nat, should I say? TJF Friday and the crew. Good to see you, Nat Turner. Yeah, we really appreciate you. And we'll try to take some phone calls today. The number is 873-7134. I'll put the number up throughout the rest of the conversation intermittently. And if you want to call in, hey, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to hit that number and give us a call. We won't bite. We're friendly here. We will not bite.
Speak for yourself, Nathan.
Kevin might back Kevin Gordon, but he's not here with us today. So you're all good. You're all good. Jared's in the house. What's up, Jared? Pat's in the house. Krutha's in the house. Good to see you. Everybody's here. I appreciate you. Please lift us up and please like and in particular share this podcast so people can interact while we're live. We get a lot of interaction afterward. I see the numbers and I see people posting stuff. But if you can be with us while we're live, it just makes it even better. What's up, Michael? Hey, my man Michael there. Michael is my MAGA friend who I'm trying to convert. He's my personal project. What's up, Michael? Good to see you, bro. Glad you're here. Again, if you want to give us a call, I'll give you the number. I'll put on the screen later, 873-7134. And let's get straight into it. It's a lot to talk about. So we were together. It was the Three Amigos. So Three Amigos again right now on Tuesday. And we spent the first, what's up, Graxton's in the house, aka Black Russia, as I call him. Nathan Ivy Show listeners remember that name. But we spent a lot of time on Tuesday talking about Joe Biden, current President Joe Biden pardoning his son, the pros and cons, the impact, should he not have, that kind of thing. But I want to kick things off with another conversation about pardons because I'm not sure how many people have been watching the news, but there's some conversation inside the White House about whether Joe Biden should preemptively pardon other individuals, people like Adam Schiff, Liz Cheney, who have been targets of incoming President Donald Trump. He's claiming retribution. A lot of people are taking him for his word. And so there's a question mark. Again, this is happening inside the White House as to whether Joe Biden should preemptively pardon people such as I mentioned before, Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff. I want to know what the crew thinks. What do you guys think about that? Does that strike you as a good idea, bad idea? What do you think?
Well, I think it strikes me as an understandable idea, but not something they should do. I agree with the fears they're expressing. I have no doubt that Kash Patel or whoever else takes over the FBI and the people he's going to put in the Justice Department, they are going to use the Justice Department and the FBI as kind of a secret police for Trump. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I think to use that Maya Angelou expression again, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And I have no doubt that Trump is going to use it in that way. Nonetheless, I don't think it's a good idea to issue those preemptive pardons. We talked about last week about one thing when it's his son. I get that. But the problem is when you issue preemptive pardons to all these other people, even though it's a legitimate fear, you're basically admitting in advance that the system doesn't work. Because if the system works, they should be okay. Now, it may not hold up, but I think that it sends a bad message, and it's something that Trump can use to claim these people were afraid, they committed crimes, this and that. So, no, I don't think they should issue those pardons.
Okay. Kevin Aldridge, what's your take on it, bro?
Yeah, I agree with Phil. I think it's a bad idea, namely because what are you going to pardon them for? You know, pardons are usually for people who have been accused of or have committed crimes that you feel like have been treated unfairly. And my question would be exactly what are you going to pardon these people from? And secondly, a lot of these people, you know, Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, you know, these aren't even folks who have even requested or asked for pardons. So I think there's that whole question, and I agree entirely with Phil that while it will not protect them from having to go through any kind of court or investigation process, maybe even to have to expend money to defend themselves in these cases. It would be an admission of the fact that you don't have faith in our system of justice, that things would work out in the favor of those who actually had not, you know, committed crimes. I mean, you know, hell, Trump actually did stuff and has managed to, the justice system has managed to allow him to escape some of the consequences of those things. So I don't agree with it at all. I think it's a bad precedent. I think it's even bad that they're having the conversations right now. While understandable, I do think that this is something they should stay away from.
If I can throw one quick point in also, you remember that a whole bunch of Trump sycophants, like Matt Gaetz and others, tried to get the same thing from Trump when he was leaving office, and Trump didn't give them the pardon. So I don't think you want to have that contrast where he can say, "Oh, I wouldn't undermine the rule of law, but you did."
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page on this one, from what I'm hearing from both of you guys. You know, for me, when I look at Adam Schiff and I look at Liz Cheney and I look at other people, even Republicans who may have sort of crossed the party line to support Kamala Harris, and or even be very vocal about, you know, their critique of Donald Trump. You know, many of these folks are elected officials, and I just kind of feel like it kind of comes with the territory. Like, you know, you got to stand on business. Like, if this is how you felt about him, then this is how you felt about him, regardless of whatever the consequences might be in the near future. So, you know, I don't have a problem with them having the conversation, because what that shows me is that they care about other people. I don't have a problem with that. But I do fall along the same lines of what you both said, like what Kevin just said, like, you know, pardon you for what? That's the question that is going to beg. And then the other side, and then people who might even be Republican, they're going to start thinking like, so what did you do wrong? It just looks bad. And my biggest issue is these are not civilians. For civilians, these are elected officials. They chose this line of work. They chose to take this stance. And if Donald Trump wants to come after them, let him come after him. And hopefully the system will hold. We don't know, you know, with the people he's trying to put in place with the new administration. But if he goes after them, the process of going after them might reveal something that we need to see. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's the same thing that we saw in Congress with all of the, you know, the investigations into Joe Biden. I mean, if there's evidence, there's evidence. If there's not, there's not. You can't, you know, you can't manufacture evidence. Like, they can take you through the circus. They can, like I said, they can investigate. They can do whatever they want to do with regard to that. But when it comes to actually punishing people, putting people in jail, you got to have evidence. And at the end of the day, you know, they may try to do these show trial investigation type things to punish them, make them have to go through the process of defending themselves and expending cash. And that's unfortunate that some of those folks might have to endure that. But I think at the end of the day, if you don't have any evidence, that's going to show at the end of the day. And I think the American people are smart. They'll see they'll see through the circus shenanigans. And I think if Kash Patel and Donald Trump and whoever wants to go down this path, I think it'll be exposed to the people in the end, and they'll see it for what it is.
Well, I slightly disagree with Kevin. If one of the things that I've read is that this is interesting. The Russian Constitution actually has very similar protections to what ours does. Okay, but they don't live up to them. And Russia, and take Hungary that I talked about before, they have elections. Okay, the elections just don't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And I think that when you say that, Kevin, the system will hold, I'm not so sure about that. Let's take the documents case, okay, where you had a Trump-appointed judge who gave this, obviously was going over backwards to help Trump, who appointed her, and who threw out the case on grounds that were easily going to be overturned. It was pure BS. Okay, she took one comment from Justice Thomas and blew it up and threw out the case. Now, if they had been able to pursue it, it would have been overturned. I'll guarantee it. But the point is, when you put enough people in the judiciary, especially, that are basically just loyalists, not to mention the FBI and the Justice Department, I don't have that confidence that the system will hold.
But the only thing I would challenge you with on that, Phil, is you kind of undermine your own argument by saying that had it gone forward, it probably would have been overturned, which speaks to the fact that we do have checks and balances in our system where our system is set up to force and challenge, perhaps corrupt elements. I mean, yeah, you may have a biased or one corrupt element who's going to do that. But there are also a lot of other judges and a lot of other mechanisms that counterbalance that have the opportunity to overturn and overrule and appeal and challenge different things. And I think that, you can't say in one breath that you worry about the system holding up, but then in the next breath say, well, the system would have held up had it gone forward.
I was talking in terms of pre-Trump system, not really post-Trump,
sure.
Where I think it's going to be different because the message will go out, and it'll go out to the courts too, that if you want to advance, you better please the president. And remember something, even though federal judges are appointed for life, which I totally believe in because I think it gives them a greater degree of ability to act independently. Nonetheless, what you've seen in recent years is when a Republican is in the White House, they promote, meaning move up to the Court of Appeals or from the Court of Appeals to the Supreme Court, the judges that have ruled the way they want them to. And my fear about not to get too off the space here, but my fear about the judiciary as exhibited by Judge Cannon there, the one down in Florida, is that they are all auditioning for Trump. They want to get moved up the ladder and they want to demonstrate that they're hardcore right-wingers or whatever, or pro-life, whatever it is. And I think that's a dangerous thing in terms of upholding the rule of law.
Let me welcome Raven in. Hey, Raven, can you hear us?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah,
okay.
I want to do a quick mic check for you. So thanks for joining us a little bit late. I'm glad that you're here. The topic that we're talking about is should Biden, well, there's some conversation that we found through various news outlets and their reporting that there's been a conversation this past week, and may have gone on before that, but this past week, as to whether Joe Biden should preemptively pardon people like Adam Schiff or Liz Cheney because they seem to be, critics and have caught the attention and the ire of the incoming president. So, kind of the thing where Biden would do that to protect them. So we've been talking about the pros and cons of that. What's your opinion?
Well, I'll start with the question. Has this been done before? Or would this be unprecedented for a president to do?
Well, it was done for Hunter Biden. We know that. That was yeah.
Well, I think she means preemptively.
Okay.
Yeah, like have we watched the sitting president know that, there will be certain people in his administration that would be targeted after his departure and decided to put in place these certain protections? Have we seen this before?
Actually, if I can interrupt, it was done. That was what Gerald Ford did to you guys are too young perhaps to remember this, but that's what he did for Richard Nixon. I was listening to a podcast the other day on this. It was a preemptive pardon, and we could argue whether that was the right thing or not, but I think that's probably the best example.
I don't know. I think that with stuff like this, you do have to kind of think ahead, because we could also very much so see the same thing coming out of a Trump administration. So no matter what he does over the next 4 years, what's stopping him from, if it becomes a thing now, if what is stopping him from doing the same? So if him and his cronies get together and they do a whole bunch of foolishness in the next 4 years, what is stopping him from then saying on his way out, if we're still a democracy by that point, what is stopping him from doing something similar, to where he and now the people who have kind of helped him do whatever nefarious things that I predict that he will do, what's stopping him from protecting those people after his departure? How do you then hold any of those offices accountable if the leaving leader has the ability to protect everybody who did his bidding while he was there? It kind of is a slippery slope.
And that's why this
That's
is
a great question. And it begs it almost begs the question as to when this is going to happen. Not if. It's like, do you want the Democrat president to do this or Republican president to do this?
So you think it'll happen regardless?
The course that we're on right now, it seems like that's going to happen. It's inevitable.
Yeah, but see, here's why I think this is a bad idea, and this is the slippery slope that I think the Democrats are on right now. And it was the same thing Mitch McConnell tried to. Ironically, he warned about it. I can't remember what the Democratic senator was, Harry Reid, when Harry Reid changed the rules about the voting threshold in the Senate or whatever. And Mitch McConnell warned at that time. He said, hey, this might be a good thing, an expedient thing for you politically right now, but you'll come to regret it later on down the road. And I think everybody would agree that, yeah, when the Republicans started using that and it was to their advantage, I think Democrats looked back on that and said, well, it was a good thing when Reid did it. And now it's not such a good thing because, the Republicans are doing a whole lot of things that we wish we could stop. And I think if Biden goes down this path with the preemptive pardons, all that does is give Donald Trump permission and an excuse to already say, maybe do something that he might have already been wanting or thinking about doing, and saying, well, now, look, Joe Biden and the Democrats did it, so you don't have anything to say now. So I don't think you want to be the first person out of the barn with that, because what it does is it unleashes a whole bunch of
you open Pandora's box.
Things down the road. So if Donald Trump wants to go down that road, let him be the one to do it. But I think if you want to make sure that you keep things the way that they should be, I don't know that you want to be the first one to do it, to say, oh, well, I know they're going to eventually do it, so we need to do it right now. You either believe in the principles or you don't believe in the principles. You can't become the thing that you hate because you're afraid somebody else is going to do it down the road. I don't agree with that at all.
Anthony writes, Dems have to start playing just as dirty as Republicans. You guys agree with that?
Nope.
It's a slippery slope when you play like that, because what is that Democrats have a stopping point. That's why so many people align themselves with that party, because there's fighting and then there's dirty fighting. Like, everybody loves a good fight. Everybody loves we all have understood the rules of engagement, and we are, conducting this battle as such. When you start to do these things that come across as, underhanded or outside of the rule of law or outside of the rules of engagement, you open the door for that. It's a blessing and a curse to kind of be on the quote unquote side of right, because you set the tone, you set the standard, you set the expectation for what is right and wrong. And so when you start to blur that line between what is right and wrong, you also are responsible for how wrong reacts to whatever you put out there. So if you decide to do something that is unprecedented and that might just change the course of the way we deal with American politics, you can't really be mad if Republicans respond in that same way. And that is why you don't do things that you don't want done in return. You don't do things or put things out there that you don't want your enemy to be able to be like, oh, well, you open the door for this, so here we are. This is how we're going to do this now. It's unfortunate. Democrats don't have they don't have the ability to play dirty, because when you play dirty, what is stopping people from deciding that you are no longer who they align themselves with. You run the risk of losing a lot of good people who still believe in principle, who still believe in morals when they go out and they cast their vote. Are you willing to sacrifice that demographic of people? Because the one of the main reasons I don't vote Republican majority of the time is because I don't think that they're good people. And so if I don't believe that you're good people, no matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, I'm not going to vote for you. And that demographic of voter they have to worry about when they make these kind of decisions.
But
Nathan,
they still won, though.
Nathan, real quick. Last week, you used the word, I think, gangster in relation to the kind of tactics that you think the Democrats should engage in. And, you know, that could mean a lot of things. If it means being tough and fighting hard, yeah, that's fine. But if it means doing, as Raven said, underhanded, illegal, really illegal or unethical things, I don't think it's a trite thing to say, but I don't think that responding bad to evil for evil is the way to do things.
Yeah, I think, and I think people are I think people are misanalyzing like why people voted the way they did or why Democrats and Republicans won. Like if you think Republicans won because they played dirty or they didn't play fair, then I don't think that you're really sort of like listening to the feedback that you're getting from voters. Like, again, I would say if people want to say, hey, we need to run smarter, tougher campaigns, that's fine. That's different than saying we don't got to play by the rules or we got to do underhanded or play dirty things. Absolutely. Could the Democrats have run a smarter campaign? Could they have been, more strategic? Could they have pointed out more of the flaws? Like, I don't think, like, as you said, Nathan, who's the villain or pointing out the flaws? I don't think that's dirty. I think that's good politics right there.
Let me ask you a question.
I would say lying. Putting out false information.
But Kevin,
that's dirty and unfair play. But I refuse to believe that because Democrats didn't play dirty is the reason why they lost. They lost because they didn't have the right message. That's why they lost.
I don't know. So how would you look at the vilification of immigrants and in particular the Haitian immigrants in Springfield? Like, I would look at that and say that's dirty politics. But
yeah, I would too.
It worked for them. But it worked for them.
It plays on fears and stereotypes of
it worked for them. So dirty politics did work for them.
But that wasn't what won. It was the larger issue. It wasn't the Haitian immigrants eating pets that made people vote for them. It was the larger issue of immigration and by the perception that Biden and Harris failed and did not do anything to stop the influx of immigrants in the community. It wasn't that Haitian immigrants were eating pets. It was people were pissed off that the Biden-Harris administration had done nothing to stop the influx of illegal immigrants.
Yeah, well, two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, two things can be true at the same time.
The fact is, Kevin, you can't say that the Democrats didn't lose because of those kind of ugly tactics. As Nathan said, poisoning the blood, they're eating the pets, and even lying about that she didn't work for McDonald's.
That appeals to a certain type of voter. But anybody with any stretch of reasonable intelligence, okay? Let's just be honest about that.
Kevin, they won.
If you're going to buy that, you already have racist tendencies, right?
Exactly.
That's what I say. Like,
okay,
those types of messages,
so they played into America's racist tendencies.
People who want to hear those types of messages are already predisposed to hear that. That's confirmation for
77 million people voted for Trump.
Not all 77 million, Nathan. That's the mistake. Like, you want to, and this is the mistake that Democrats make. You want to lump all 77 million people who voted for Trump.
Because I don't know how to slice it. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know how many were affected.
And that is what the Democrats face.
We're getting away from the point.
In trouble is they want to paint a broad brush of all Trump voters.
We're getting
in one way. You got to be surgical. You got to put a scalpel into the voting base.
We're getting away
Democrats
from the point.
Want to keep lumping all Trump voters into one category. They're going to.
And he's not doing that. He's
not
doing that.
My argument.
He's not doing
my
that.
argument is that
your argument.
My argument is that
issue is
the
whether
Republican Party, Trump and Vance, use dirty tactics to win. So we were talking about whether the Democrats should start playing dirty enough. That's why dirty or not. That's why I asked you, do you think that what they did, they played the race card?
And also,
To
let's
me,
be
that's playing
clear.
dirty.
And
They
also,
do that every election.
but also let's be clear
And
as
it
well.
works.
Even if those quote unquote
in
dirty
2020.
tactics did not work for every Trump, like if it didn't pull in every Trump supporter, because I get what you're saying, Kevin. Those dirty, tactics didn't appeal to every Trump supporter, but they still align themselves with that party that is willing to do those dirty tactics to pull in other Trump voters.
Right.
And so you can't really, there is no slicing it. If you are voting a certain specific way, it is because you agree enough with everything else that's happening that you will look over or excuse everything else that's happening with that party, including
I
those dirty
disagree with
politics.
that. I think that's too simplistic a way of looking at politics, because here's the reality. No party and no candidate, nobody supports everything that every party or every candidate believes in. We'll just take the abortion issue for example. I know a lot of people who, from a faith standpoint, don't agree with abortion, right? But they still consider themselves Democrats or liberals, and they will vote for a candidate. So is it fair to say that just because I voted for a Democratic or a liberal candidate that I support abortion, right?
It means you're okay with your stance. It means you're okay with it.
Yeah.
It means it's not. It means it's
not
enough of an issue.
It doesn't mean that, Nathan. What it means
How could
is
it not if you
what
vote
it
for
means
them?
no, Nathan, let me explain.
Okay.
What it means is that, okay, looking at the grand scheme of things, no candidate is perfect, and I'm not going to agree with everything, but I agree with maybe more things that are going to improve my life than these things with this party or this candidate that I don't agree with. So I'll swallow it, right? I'll swallow it. I'll deal with it. Don't mean I like it. Don't mean
it means you're okay with it.
No.
Okay, whatever.
I think
you don't have to like something to be okay with it.
I think you guys are both missing something. Okay, I agree with Nathan. I agree with Nathan that or maybe I'm agreeing with. I don't know who I'm agreeing with, but what I would agree with is I agree. You can't say every Trump voter agrees with everything or puts up with everything, however you want to say it.
That's not even the conversation.
That Trump does. However, at the same time, I'll say this to Kevin: you can't say, "Oh, she lost. She didn't lose because of the dirty tactics. She lost because of no. She lost because of the failure of immigration issues, failure of immigration measures, and so forth." There are numerous factors. Yeah, the fact that we had inflation, the fact that the border had been open. Yeah, but you can't also dismiss the dirty tactics, the racism, all that language, poisoning the blood, constantly a fire hose of lies. And just to get us back on the original question, I certainly believe, and I'd be interested if the rest of you feel, that we, or I won't say we, Democrats, or those who are opposed to Trump, shouldn't do tit for tat. We should not return evil for evil.
And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about whether the Democrats should start playing a little bit dirty. But I think about negative campaigning. There's a reason why campaigns and politicians use negative campaigning. Some people might say that's wrong because it works. It works.
Negative campaigning isn't necessarily.
The line I'm drawing is not in negative campaigning, because negative campaign ads do work. Right. Negative campaign ads should be based in truth, not in racism, not in lies, not in stereotypes.
But they're not.
So if you're going to go out, so if you're saying that I think Democrats should go out and manufacture falsities and participate in stereotype, what makes them any better? What gives them any more moral high ground than you are becoming the thing that you hate? And that's always my argument against this. You can't claim to hate something and then become that thing. That's the essence of hypocrisy. That's what frustrates us so much about Donald Trump. And if you are one that believes that if you are one, especially if you are somebody who is of a belief in a higher power of faith, and you believe that evil always wins, then I don't know what to say about that.
Let me ask you this.
What's the point? What's the point of any of us trying to be good?
I believe nice guys finish last in this politics thing. So let me ask you a question. So you get into a fight with somebody, talking to you, Kevin. You get into a fight with somebody, but you got a pistol in your pocket. Y'all get into a physical altercation. You guys are grappling and fighting. and he pulls out his weapon at some point, are you going to pull out your weapon?
I think that's a bad analogy.
I'm just asking you to answer the question.
That's kind of a terrible analogy.
You're talking about
it's not a terrible analogy. Let me hear me out. Hear me out. Hear me out. First, answer the question for me.
Politics.
First, answer the question for me. You get into a fist fight with somebody, but you got a pistol in your pocket, right? You guys are grappling. Y'all squared up. And at some point, he pulls out his weapon. Are you going to pull out your weapon is my question for you.
I'm going to do whatever I got to do to
and it's the same thing in politics. When you see the other side starting to take it there, you have to take it there too.
No, because I think that's different. I think it's a bad comparison when you're talking about politics and when you're talking about politics and an actual life or death scenario.
It's an analogy,
you guys get on me all the time about bad analogies. That is a bad analogy.
But how is it a bad analogy?
You give me on the apples and oranges all the time. That is an apples and oranges argument.
I hear you saying that, but how is it a bad analogy?
Can I explain it? It's a bad analogy. It's a bad analogy because you are taking politics is a long game. It has the ability to shift and change and evolve over time. When you are in a life or death situation where somebody pulls a gun on you, you have a split-second decision to make in order to save your life. That is not politics. Politics is a strategy game. So it would have been better if you had said that, you are two generals and in wartime, and and the person that you are or general that you are against is deciding to strategize in a way that might become a victory for them in this war or whatever, and you have to then go back to the drawing board and strategize what kind of tactic you're going to take. But like a one-on-one man-to-man street fight where guns are involved, that is a split-second decision that you have to make just then in that moment. That's not necessarily what we're dealing with when we're dealing with politics. And there are other people involved in the decision making when you are dealing with politics. It ain't just whatever this politician feels in the moment or whatever this party feels in the moment. The party has to answer to the people. And if all of the people are not on one accord about pulling that trigger, it is a wasted effort. You end up running the risk of alienating a very large group of that party who does not feel that pulling that gun out and shooting is the right way to go about that.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example if I could.
I'm on point.
If I could,
I hear what you're saying, but I think I'm on point.
If you go to after what was a disgraceful episode in our history, I believe, was when we used torture after 9/11. And it was the old ways, end justifies the means. We had all kinds of reasons because that's how they do it. No, that was a disgraceful episode because it went against our values. That we actually allowed or directed our CIA to use. It was torture. It was, they had a fancy name for it, I forget, but it was torture. And it's a shameful episode. And I think the same principle applies. You don't return evil for good. Evil for evil. Sorry.
Evil. I don't know. All I'm saying is we're looking at the Republican Party, and I think we all agree with this, that they use whatever taxes they got to. The race card. You saw Mitch McConnell when Obama was reelected. He wouldn't take a vote on Merrick Garland because he was hoping that a Republican would win, and it worked for him. That was dirty tactics. So we're watching the Republican Party use dirty tactics, and they're winning. And you're telling me the Democrats need to be the nice guys.
First of all, let me say this. They're not, Nathan, let me say this. They're not winning. They won this round. See, this is what I hate about these conversations.
They're winning.
About people getting their feelings after the election. Okay, you lost this one. Guess what? The Republicans lost in 2020. And there was a whole lot of people who were like, oh, Trump is beaten. The Republican Party is dead. The Democrats about to move forward. And then 4 years later, those same people who were saying that the Republican Party was dead, that Trump was vanquished, he's in the court cases and all. Look, a lot happens in 4 years. A lot of things change. Trump hasn't even gotten in the White House yet and hasn't even done anything. People's attitudes and things are going to change. Yes, I agree with Raven. This is a long game. They won this round. Democrats won the last round. Before that, Obama won 2 rounds in a row. So I'm not going to sit here and say.
Are you trying to say the Republicans aren't winning?
They won. They won. They won this round. They're
winning right
Nathan,
now.
But it's a long game. It's a long game fight. They won this round, right? You can't look when you're in a fight. You have a strategy.
So now you're gonna do a fight analogy. I want to hear this. Go right ahead.
I'm sliding on your bad analogy since that's where
it was a great analogy.
It was not a good analogy.
I was 100% on point, but I understand.
And I get why you made the analogy, because when you simplify it like that, it makes total sense to your point. Like if somebody, I ain't gonna lie to you, somebody walk up on me with a gun and they pull it out and they point it at me, and if I got one, I'm pulling the trigger, because I'm not gonna die in this moment. But again, that is a quick split decision life or death moment, and I don't think that politics is a split decision thing. It requires strategy.
That's not the similarity in the analogy. I understand what you're saying. I understand, but go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I think it boils down to this: either you got principles or you don't. You either have things that you believe in and that you stand on, or you don't. And if you are willing to throw away and compromise your principles because you lost a round, right, then you didn't have strong principles to begin with. One of the things that we dislike about Trump is that the man has no principles. He'll do and say anything. So if you're suggesting that now the Democrats, in order to win, have to become that, I don't believe that. And I think that is too simplistic and non-thinking of a way of looking at this election. And that's what Democrats got to do. You really got to peel back the layers. You really got to examine what happened and not be so quick to take these knee-jerk or simplistic looks at why you lost. Like, oh, all of a sudden, if we start playing dirty, we're going to win elections. If that's your answer as a Democrat, you're going to keep losing.
Oh, that's part of it. That's part of the answer. And the cemetery is full of men and women with principles. It's full of them.
Okay, but the people who are on, the people who we elevate and the people who we celebrate and the people who we give Nobel Prizes to and things of that nature, those are the principal people.
So Kevin, let me ask you a question. Are you saying that there is no merit, there is no reason to be noble? Because that's kind of what I'm getting from the argument that you're making. Like,
are you saying Kevin or me?
You. I'm sorry, Nathan. I'm sorry. I've called you Kevin, but I'm talking to Nathan. Are you saying with your argument that there is no merit in trying to do things in a noble way?
I feel like in a noble way. I'm not even sure what that means in the world of modern day politics. Like, noble?
I mean, just in a way that was.
I'm not suggesting. So let me clarify more. For this conversation, I'm not suggesting that the Democrats should abandon doing what's right. Meaning, I'm not saying you should go out here and commit crimes or, betray your own ethics. But I do think that you should be looking at some of the tactics that the Republican Party has used when they're in power. And you should seriously think about integrating that into your plan when you're in power, because it works. It works. And at the end of the day,
what would be the dirty tactics that Democrats could use? Because the dirty tactics we've established that Republicans use are racism, misogyny, outright lies. So what dirty tactics do you suggest?
Targeting. I'd add targeting vulnerable people.
Yeah. Gays, LGBTQ. So exactly what from that playbook should Democrats borrow, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, I think one easy one is doing what you saw Mitch McConnell do when he was a Senate Majority Leader. Like, they were able to hold off the ability for Obama to even get a vote on Merrick Garland, because they were hoping that it would benefit them, which it did. So in my world, hey, if it's good for you, it's good for me. If you see a Democrat majority and they find themselves in a similar circumstance, if they decided to stall the vote in hopes that there'll be an election and a Democrat will win and then they'll vote on another Supreme Court justice, I would have no problem with it. Now, the Republican Party will say that's dirty, but I would say you did it first, so I want to do it too. So that's just one.
Who's to say that they won't do that? I mean, the Democrats haven't been in a position to be able to do that. When Trump has had the opportunity to appoint judges, they haven't been in power. They haven't had the ability to hold that up. McConnell was able to do that because the Republicans had control of Congress at that time when Obama was there. So we don't know that Democrats wouldn't do that.
I'm not arguing with the opportunity. I'm just saying, I'm just answering your question. So that's one example. But, and again, going back to this, is that McConnell did that first. The Democrats didn't do that. He did that first, and it seems to have not cost them in elections.
Hey,
like
hey,
right
hey!
now,
Hold it. You're assuming. One thing I'll disagree with that Kevin was saying was this. If I understand him, that if we engage in those kind of dirty, unethical tactics, we'll ultimately end up losing. See, I don't
I don't
think
believe
that's
that.
the point.
I don't believe that one bit.
Just a
No, I
second.
never said that. I
Let me
never said
finish.
that.
I
didn't say.
don't think that's the point. It's like the torture thing. Maybe the torture helped us some way, helped us win the war against terrorism in some way. If so, I still wouldn't do it because it's wrong. Okay, and using those kind of ugly tactics, and I include McConnell's in that. I think it was totally wrong, and I wouldn't want anybody to do it again because it's undermining the Constitution. The Constitution says the president has the right to appoint a Supreme Court justice, and the Senate has to advise. Now, yeah, what he did is technically legal, but it's totally, it undermines the meaning of the Constitution. What's the next thing? They're going to stall it for 2 years? Okay, and then we're undermining the whole Constitution, the rule of law. So I don't agree with repeating McConnell's tactic if the Democrats had the opportunity to.
And also, when you remove the Democratic Party's ability to not move with those dirty tactics, when you start implementing some of those quote unquote dirty tactics that we've seen from that other party, how do you then measure the difference between you and that party? I mean, sure, you can say policy differences and things like that, and motivations and things like that. But if it quack like a duck and it walk like a duck and it, you know what I mean? If it got feathers like a duck, how do you differentiate between the two parties? Because when you start implementing those same tactics, I believe that it also in that way becomes a slippery slope of, well, I mean, you're calling yourself the Democratic Party, but you're functioning exactly like the Republican Party. So how do I, as a voter, how do I tell the difference between the two of you? And how do I, and not only that, but how do I, because you also have to think, not everybody who is a voter is an informed voter, and not everybody who is a voter is an educated voter. And so a lot of them, we just had this conversation last time we were on Hot Mic. A lot of voters, especially young voters, are looking at the different parties as a personification, as a person. Do I like this person's personality? Do I like this person's, ethics? Do I like their morals? Do I like their principles? It ain't just policy for a lot of people. It is, what is the voice? What is the image, the representation that this party puts out? And if that is a party of integrity, if that is a party of doing the right thing, of protecting people, and the what was referred to earlier as, the vulnerable demographics of people who need representation. If that is what the Democratic Party is supposed to be, how do I differentiate that when they're operating in the same way of that party that is targeting those people, or that has no problem doing away with morals or doing away with quote unquote righteousness in order to achieve their goal?
I think that's fair. I think everything you're saying is all fair, Raven. And I think that, and we've talked about this, I think that it doesn't bode well for the future of our politics, because my response would be to someone who asks that question of the Democrat Party, like, well, how am I going to be able to tell you the difference? What I would tell you is, you better come out to these elections. Like, if you want me to be Mr. Good Guy, well, then when I'm being Mr. Good Guy and you see me in a fight with evil, you better get out here and vote for me. Because if not, I got to change my tactics to win. If you didn't like the nice guy tactic, I got to go with something else so I can get in the White House and we can get, the Senate back and get the House of Representatives back. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, when I'm the nice guy, I can tell the difference, but I'm not voting for you.
So again, Nathan, the example that you gave where you talked about what Mitch McConnell did, that has no bearing whatsoever on what we're talking about winning elections. And we're talking about tactics used in campaigns to win elections. So again, you did not answer my question about what should the Democrats borrow from the Republicans' playbook that's going to result in them winning elections. Because here's one thing that I will say is, they tried some of that with Trump. I mean, look, maybe they didn't spend at the same clip. And maybe that's a question in terms of what they spent. But they spent the better part of this entire election calling Trump Hitler, saying that he was an existential threat. They called him a liar. They called him every name in the book, twice repeat, convicted felon. And all of this stuff was true, right? And that still didn't break through. that still wasn't enough to break through on him. So again, my question is, what more or what differently or what would the messaging have been that the quote unquote dirty tactics that would have won Kamala Harris this election?
Well, that's a fair question. And I want to circle back to, you said they, because Kamala Harris wasn't calling Joe Biden, Trump, Hitler. She responded to a question, but that's not what she was saying about him during the campaign.
Clearly, she called him a fascist.
And then, she responded to a question during an interview on CNN about that. She wasn't out there on the campaign trail calling him a fascist all the time. That's not what she was doing. So I just want to clarify that. But I want to answer your question because I think
should she have been?
I'm sorry.
I mean, that sounds like, should she have been? That kind of sounds like the dirty tactics that you're saying that she should employ. You're saying that like that's a virtue. You're presenting it like that's a virtue that she wasn't doing that. But that don't go in line with your argument that they need to be tougher and playing more dirty tactics. So clearly you see some virtue in her not having done that, which is kind of like my point. But if I'm going to follow your argument, that's exactly what she should have been doing.
Well, I'm not sure what you're even talking about now. You're a little all over the place here.
No, I'm not.
I know exactly what he means because for the last couple of minutes you've been.
I know, but you're asking me questions, but you're not giving me a chance to even answer.
Well,
so let me figure this out. So I'm trying to figure out, what it is that you want to hear, because you asked me a question about what I think the Democrats should do, and I gave it to you. That wasn't good enough. So let me go back and try to figure out.
No, that wasn't good enough for elections, for campaign. You were talking
it wasn't good enough for you.
You're talking about what Mitch McConnell did.
Right. It wasn't good enough for you.
In this election, campaigning, because that's what we're talking about.
Right. It wasn't good enough for you.
Campaign tactics. So my question is, what borrowing from the Republican playbook, what should Kamala Harris have done that would have been dirty tactics?
Well, again, I want to back up here because we've been using the word dirty tactics, and I don't know. That's
your
fair,
word.
But I like cutthroat tactics. All of our words. We've all been using that word.
Okay.
But I think it's a mixture of dirty tactics, which you all agreed was that the Republicans were playing the race card, and that was dirty tactics. But also I see a lot of cutthroat tactics. But as I said on last show, and I'll share this with you privately, I'll say it again. I think that what the Democrats need to do is they need to start pointing fingers and telling people who the villains are. Like, not just talking about what the problem is, but telling the people who the problem is, like, and how these entities, these people are impacting your life in a negative way. That's what I see the Republican Party doing. And that's what they did with the whole immigrant thing, right? I thought it was dirty tactics. I thought it was cutthroat tactics. I thought it was playing the race card. But what they essentially did was they convinced primarily a lot of white voters that Black and brown immigrants are your enemy. They are the reasons why you're not living the American dream. They are the reasons why the expenses in your daily life are going out. So if you just get them out, then your life will be much better. I think the Democrats need to do that. They need to tell the electorate who the villains are.
What does that look like in reverse? Like, what does it look like in reverse, though, for the Democratic Party?
Well, it's an argument that they're not going to win, and me and Nathan have talked about this on the other side, because the answer to
how
that,
do you know they're not going to win?
The answer to that, because, well, I'll say this: Bernie Sanders.
But does that answer your question, though?
Bernie Sanders did it effectively. I think Bernie Sanders did it effectively, because
yes, he did.
The answer to that is who the villains are. The answer to that is your Wall Street types, your corporate types, your millionaires and billionaires. But
that don't work out because people aspire to that.
That's exactly what I told Nathan Raven. You hit the point.
But you didn't have to tell me that. I already know. But I want to.
People don't want to. People don't.
Did I answer your question?
Huh?
Did I answer your question to your satisfaction? Because I want to make sure.
Yes, you did. You did. You did. Okay. But you raised. But this gets back to what you and I talked about, and Raven hit the nail on the head. The reason why it won't resonate is because the real villains in this country is who every American aspires to be.
I don't believe that
somebody rich.
I don't believe it won't resonate one bit because it worked with Bernie.
Well, it did, but Bernie didn't even win the Democratic nomination,
and he didn't win. As we found out, is because the Democrat Party was in the bag for Hillary, and it's still a big problem with the Democrat Party.
I'm not gonna lie. The fumble that was choosing Hillary over Bernie in 2016, it will forever be a stain on the Democratic Party because
Exactly.
young people were ready. When I tell you we were ready to vote for that old white man to come and
Yes.
fix this
And so was
country.
I.
And we were robbed of that chance when he did not get the Democratic nomination. We were robbed of that. That's how a lot of young people started to, because we were really beginning to really get involved in politics around that time. Like we were really excited. And then that happened, and I could feel my fellow peers kind of like, what is this? I didn't choose.
Absolutely.
I didn't make this decision. What do you mean that the heads of the party get to choose who I can vote for in this election? That's not who I wanted to choose. I wanted to vote for Bernie. And so a lot of young voters did kind of step away from politics and have been like fighting their way back into caring again over the last 4, 8, 12 years because of that fumble that was done by the Democratic Party. We were ready. We were ready to vote for the good guy. It just we missed that opportunity in 2016. It's unfortunate because it did cause a ripple effect in this party, and that's where the division came between the older Democrats and younger Democrats. We do feel like a lot of times what we care about or who we want to support or who we want to stand behind don't matter, because if it don't fit with the old guard and what they want in this party, it don't matter. It's not going to happen.
Can I add to that point real quick, Kevin, real quick? So, and this is where I say dirty see the Republican Party. So what they'll do is they're telling their people that what's the beard there? Soros. They're telling their people that George Soros is your enemy. I think it's dirty to call the man out by name like that. But that's the kind of tactics I think that
let me just say, it's a disguised anti-Semitism.
It is.
That's
it is.
It is. It most certainly is.
And that's why that dog whistle.
It most certainly
dog whistle
is
for anti-Semitism.
You're absolutely right.
And that's why it works, because the Democrats have tried to do things similar in the past where they've talked about the Koch brothers and all of that kind of stuff, but it doesn't stick in the same way because it doesn't have the anti-Semitic context along with that plays with the audience that Republicans are trying to reach. Look,
but they abandoned that tactic. They don't even try that anymore.
Here's the tactic that Republicans are always going to, I shouldn't say always, but seemingly why they always win on it is because their boogeymen are easier for people to put their arms around than the boogeyman, than the real, villains that the Democrats want to portray. Like Wall Street and corporate America, like that's hard to wrap your arms around, but I can wrap my arms around, some conspiracy, Jewish guy in the back who's funding all this stuff. I can wrap my mind around immigrants coming in and taking jobs versus corporations sending jobs overseas, for corporate greed reasons and all of these things, union busting, so that they can keep more of their money. Like those are harder concepts for people to wrap their minds around than, hey, here's this specific person that I see every day that I realize that I can blame.
It's easier to blame this person.
My frustrations out.
Yeah.
And you know what? No, go ahead. Go right ahead.
I was gonna say it's also it's even extremely easy to blame an immigrant because they are somebody who I can see in my day-to-day life. I don't know which one of y'all is a billionaire or a millionaire or CEO or whatever walking around. If you walk past me, I don't even know your name. I don't know your name. I don't know what you look like. I can assume in my imagination that you're probably some rich older white man, but other than that, I don't know you. I can't. I'm looking at Phil, but
hold it. I resemble that
Phil
remark.
A closet millionaire, y'all. Don't let him forget it.
I thought when Raven was talking about you walk by me and you may be a billionaire, I thought you was talking about Kevin.
Not at all, Phil. Between you and Kevin, I'm assuming it's Phil. He got the money.
Hey,
Phil got the money. Yeah, you ain't gotta wonder about me.
You're throwing the George Soros thing on me.
If I am walking around my West Side neighborhood and I am interacting with the people in that neighborhood, there is a very large demographic of Hispanic immigrants or Hispanic migrants who have come here, and I don't know their status. That's not none of my business. But it's easy for me to assume that they're here illegally if I'm walking around my what would be considered a low-income neighborhood, and they're who own all the homes in that neighborhood, or they are who own all the businesses in that neighborhood, or something of that nature. Like it's very easy to make that person my enemy versus some imaginary, Wall Street finance bro or CEO, Fortune 500 CEO. I don't know that dude. I don't come in contact with that dude on a day-to-day. But I see this person all the time. I see them in my grocery store.
Mhm.
I see them, walking around my neighborhood. Like I said, they own all the homes and the businesses in my neighborhood. And now I am trying to figure out why I don't see the things that I want to see in my life. It's very easy to look at them and assume you're the reason why I don't have what I need or have what I want.
Can I add one more thing to it? I want to go back to make sure I answer Kevin's question. I thought it was a great question. I'm so glad you asked me because it put me on the spot and it makes me think. So, the other thing in terms of a tactic that I see the Republicans using that I don't think is necessarily fair, but it seems to resonate with people is criticizing the federal government. So I think the Democrats should look at the federal government and think, which of these organizations don't work? Maybe we do need to fold up some of them. I'm not talking about like the Department of Education or some of the stuff I hear coming from Elon Musk and this whole Doge committee. But clearly there's an appetite with the electorate to look at and criticize the federal government. The Democrats need to do that. Tell me which one of these federal bureaucracies do we not need? Show me which one of these
Democrats have tried to do that though.
Fold up, and then we can save taxpayers' monies. I don't think that that's the real culprit, but it's the political game that you got to play these days.
Well, I do think the truth of the Democratic Party is, and this is one of the challenges, and I say again, when you've got a big tent sort of constituency out there, and I think some of this is true to a degree. Republicans always say, hey, Democrats are the party of big government, of expanding government, and Republicans' brand has always been limited government, smaller government. The more government that's in your life, the worse that is for you, right? Democrats somewhat straddle the fence on that. Like there are some areas where they're like, well, like with abortion or in the like government doesn't need to be in there. Like there's hypocrisy, a little bit of hypocrisy on both sides of that. But I do think it's fair to say that Democrats do tend to be the party that's about having more government involvement because they feel like the government needs to play a bigger role in breaking down barriers, protecting people from certain things, regulations and whatnot. And that doesn't leave a lot of room for going in there and saying, hey, this isn't needed, right? Because a lot of these things that exist, Republicans haven't created that stuff. A lot of these have been creations of Democrats. So now you got to go back and say, hey, this thing that we created or whatever is a waste of taxpayer dollars. I'm not saying that that's not a good exercise, but every time you go in and cut one of those government programs, it's going to impact some people's lives in some way, shape, and form. And the argument is always going to be, why keep this? Why cut that? And why keep that? This is the argument that we have time and again when it comes to cutting government programs. Somebody always comes out of the woodwork with stats and a reason why cutting this program is going to hurt.
Well, they come out with political pressure. I might say that maybe this isn't the time, but I might suggest on another podcast, a topic might be for us to talk about what we believe should be cut out of the federal government. I happen to agree. I hate to admit this with the Trump people. I would eliminate the Department of Education in a heartbeat if I could, and I can make a pretty good argument for it. I also don't believe, for example, the government ought to be funding things like NPR and all those arts things. And don't get me wrong, I think NPR is terrific and PBS, but I don't think it's something the government should be used for. And again, this is probably a topic for another day, but I just want to throw that out.
It's most certainly a topic for another day because you're going to get a strong resistance from me. So let me write this down and talk about this later for sure.
I'm available anytime. Anytime.
Just as a kid who grew up on PBS, I have a huge problem with that because and this is not even what we talk about right now, but just real quick.
Yeah.
I've recognized PBS as such a staple to kids like myself. I didn't grow up with I was an impoverished kid. I didn't grow up with the luxuries of cable and stuff like that. I was a PBS kid. So all of the things that I attribute to me being so intelligent today and being such a student of life and loving to learn
said very modestly, Raven, I might say.
Yes.
Hey, listen.
Came from me being a PBS kid and enjoying those.
All right, I'll tell you about PBS.
Hey, listen, Phil.
Let me tell you something. Let me ask Raven a question. Raven, have you ever donated money to PBS?
I have, actually.
Okay, you got me in that. But here's my point.
Phil, there's no need to have a conversation now. The conversation is over. She just killed the conversation.
No. Let me make my point. I was trying to make her look as bad as me, but here's my point. My point is, I am a PBS freeloader. I'm freeloading. I've never given them any money, and I watch the thing all the time. Okay, I love the stuff, the shows, the American Experience, everything. But maybe somebody else says, well, I love Fox News. Okay, why should taxpayer money not go for that? And so, it's not a question of whether it's great and valuable. It's a question of whether it is an appropriate thing for taxpayers to pay for.
Let's have that conversation in the near future. Let's move on. Thank you for the conversation we just had. I mean, we were in some different tangents there, but I thought it was all good stuff. But let's talk about another hot topic this week. This has been a huge topic, and that is the murder of the CEO of United Health. Brian Thompson was shot and killed at 7 a.m. on Wednesday outside of what I've learned to believe to know is a very busy part of New York City. Again, the CEO of United Healthcare. There's a manhunt right now. I'm not going to show any images of the alleged perpetrator, the gunman. I think most people have been paying attention to probably have seen it. And there's just a lot of question marks. And what they found is there was words that were, I guess, scratched into some of the shell casings. 3 words: deny, defend, and depose, which I've come to understand that has been used by a lot of critics of the insurance industry, kind of like that's what the insurance industry does, right? Instead of paying your claim, they deny, defend, and depose. They want to string you out as long as possible, and then hope that you never see a day in court. And when you do see a day in court, they want to pay you a little bit of nothing. But I want to get your opinion about what's going on here. Like, is this because of something personal? Does this have something to do with the healthcare industry? Like, how does this story hit you? What's your opinion? Phil, you're on the big screen. I'll let you go first.
This is going to seem like some dark humor, but one guy wrote in or tweeted or something to the effect that I was going to send my sympathies, but they're out of network. Now, again, that's inappropriate. Wow. So I have
that was a good one.
But I don't know. I mean, I just don't know what to say. It sounds like the guy did it for so-called ideological, however deranged reasons. I don't really think there's that much to talk about, because in fairness, killing somebody, and they're 2 different issues. When you kill somebody, you got to pay the penalty and be held accountable. The other issue of whether these insurance companies are ripping us off and so forth is a totally different issue.
Yeah. I think I would start out by saying, and it has to be said, and I hate that, there has to be an additional comment after this, but I think we all have to say that, this type of murder, that this type of incident, regardless of what our issues might be with an organization or an individual, is never anything that we should condone, celebrate, endorse. It should be nothing but condemned. So let's just say that first off the hand, that whoever this shooter is, let's hope they arrest him quickly, that the full weight of the justice and the appropriate punishments that go along with what he did is there, that, our sympathies and condolences go out to the family of the CEO. All of that needs to be said and is true. But here's what I would say is that, because we don't know what the motive of the shooter is, one could assume that this is some ideological thing that somebody's taken on. This could be somebody, as you said, who has suffered some personal or family loss as a result of how this health insurance or healthcare system has done him. And so this is he's taking this out. This is his retribution. This is his revenge or whatever. All of that is speculation at this point, because we don't know. They don't have the person in custody, and we don't know what the motive is. I mean, here's what I'll say, and this just kind of goes back to the conversation that we were just kind of sort of having about sort of like who are the villains and the boogeymen. And this is part of the difficult conversation that we have when we start talking about corporate entities like private health insurers and things of that nature. We know the game that they play. The insurance game in general is a game of taking as much money as they can from you in premiums, with the hope of never having to pay any of that back, or if they do, a very small portion, and in some cases making it very difficult for you to realize the benefits that you have rightfully paid into. And I think this is what Obama talked about when he ran. I think this is the foundations of, what they were trying to do with the Affordable Care Act. A lot of people were saying, yeah, that wasn't really government health care, was really more healthcare insurance reform, right? Which, may have largely been true about that. But at the heart of what he was trying to get to is this game that the insurance industry, the health insurance industry, runs on people, that makes it very hard, that can bankrupt families, that can deny or allow people not to get access to life-saving care. And let's just say this, man, when you are in a system where you have to watch a loved one or even yourself wither and die because you could not get access to health care or the insurance premiums that you paid for, hey man, that drives some people to some dark places. Now, we don't know that that's the case with this guy, but it could be.
Yeah, reminds me of the movie. I was thinking of the movie John Q. Denzel, his young son. He had been paying insurance and premiums, and then he had a situation. He just snapped, as any parent would do. I don't know. I mean, at this point, I'm just like everybody else. I want to see more information. I was watching some law enforcement official, I can't recall his name, on a TV program a few hours before we went live today, and he said, well, yeah, he put those words, scratched those words onto the shell casings, but he might have done that just to throw people off. This law enforcement official on CNN, I believe it was, he even suggested that, perhaps the CEO paid for this, like it was he wanted to die for whatever reason. So basically what he was trying to say is that they have no idea now. They're looking for this person, and anything is a possibility. They're looking at everybody at this point, but it's a really odd situation.
I do think it's interesting, though, that the easy assumption for a lot of people to make is that it's because that this man has dealt with some sort of issue with his insurance company or insurance in general, or has some kind of, ire with the whole process of insurance. And so he has garnered all of his frustration into this very, intense moment of, I need revenge. Like, the fact that a lot of us are making that assumption, I think that speaks to a lot of what a lot of people feel when it comes to this whole insurance thing. Like, even all types of insurance, not just health insurance. Like, I can't tell you how many times this year alone I've had conversations with people about auto insurance and home insurance and all these different sorts of insurances that people feel like they're being ripped off, because when you spend so much of your hard-earned money investing into these policies, and then something goes wrong, God forbid, and then you try to file a claim, or you try to go through that very difficult process of getting your claim, processed and dealt with in a timely fashion so that your whole life doesn't get upset by this event. It does give you that frustration. It does leave you with that bad taste in your mouth for the process, and for, like, it's funny to me, not funny haha, but funny like, oh, okay, that everybody's making that assumption, because it does mean that we should probably be relooking at how we deal with insurance. Now, I don't know how you even begin to do that. I don't know who you start talking to have those conversations to facilitate that change, but there is an issue in this country with insurance and how that process takes place. And I think that is something like this, if nothing else, it should facilitate and start those conversations on how we deal with this, because I don't think that this is the last time we'll see something like this, especially now that we've seen it, like, in front of our face. Like, people are watching this happen on the 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock news, and we're watching this story unfold. I guarantee it, with anything else, if you expose people to something, you run the risk of inspiring other people to do something similar. And so I think that we cannot afford to not have conversations about how the insurance industry and how we who pay for it interact with one another. We have to have that conversation, because if we don't, we're going to see stuff like this happen more and more and more.
I dig it. Do you think that we will have those conversations? Now, I'm saying that as we're having that conversation, right? But you're a media person. I'm a media person. Kevin's a media person. Do you think that this will spark more widespread conversations about the insurance company, their tactics, our expectations?
Absolutely. I think that it's going to cause a lot of people to do a lot of deep diving. A lot of people are going to be a lot more vocal about what they go through individually with their insurance companies. Like on a very low level, thing, I dealt with some stuff with my car insurance this year because I got into an accident, and they took me through this whole long process just to total out my car, which could have been fixed in my opinion. I don't know nothing about auto mechanics, but I feel like my car could have been fixed, but they totaled it out, and I didn't really I was just really upset and disgusted by that process. I couldn't wait to tell people how disgusted I was. And so I think that it's going to happen. Like as a media person, I have a responsibility to talk about this stuff anyway. But I do think that for the average person who is like in the middle of making some decisions, especially with the economy the way it is now, and people are looking at their bills and figuring out which one they're not going to pay this month, I think that it's going to foster those conversations of, well, I've been paying this insurance for I don't know how long. I'll never use it. But every time I have tried to use it, I've always run into some issues. How about I just, step away from dealing with this right now? And if insurance companies want to keep their customers, they're going to have to answer some of those hard-hitting questions about why every time I file a claim, I can't depend on my insurance company to have my back. If they don't want to be open to those conversations, they're going to lose customers.
But you know what, though, the Raven, here's what I would disagree. Here's where I would slightly disagree with you on that is that, look, the way this system is set up, and again, you got to go back, 16 years to when Obama was having this conversation about the Affordable Care Act. And this goes back, again, to our early conversation about what is the role of government and then what should be left to privatization. Everything that you leave to privatization is going to be subject to these same types of conversations because it's business. And when it's business, at the end of the day, it comes down to the bottom line. What is the thing that we always say about corporations? They care about profits over people. Yeah. And that is what you run into when you have the privatization of anything. So when you talk about privatization of education, it's going to come down to profits over people. Who can afford it, who can't. The role of government, where they come in, government is not about profit. It's about trying to provide a service for the people. And so that's what's at the crux of this argument between what should be publicly funded and what is privately run. And so you're never going to be able to avoid these types of conversations. And there's always going to be that rub of, man, this really is messed up. What they're taking, but this is what corporations do. This is what businesses do because they got to protect their profits. They got to pay their shareholders. And so this is always going to be the rub with this type of thing when you're talking about private versus public. And this is part of what Americans have to wrestle with when it comes to healthcare. We're talking about insurance right now, but there's the other part of this where we question, like, nobody questions the pricing of these medical services, right? What hospitals charge for
MRI. This opens the conversation for that.
Right.
I think talking about insurance opens the conversation for that. Because I remember before I even knew, before I had any concept of how insurance worked, I just knew I had to have it. Like in some form or fashion, I was told I had to have it, and so I had it. But I know once I really started having to be a big girl and be an adult and really start asking questions about where my money is going, I did do that research and try to figure out if I get a medical bill and they charging me $1,000 for a quick ER run where they didn't do nothing but take my blood pressure, I need to know why I'm being charged $1,000 for this. Right. And you look through your billing and you see they charge you like $100 for a Band-Aid and $200 here for some gauze that you never even saw. The nurse didn't even pull it out the drawer. Like, it's that kind of stuff that makes you question why things are priced the way that they are. You have to start with the insurance because the insurance is going to give you that itemized list to tell you, well, this is what we cover and this is why you pay so much every month. Okay, cool. Why is it $200 for a diaper after I give birth to my child? Y'all supposed to give me this because I just had a child. Why am I paying all of these extra fees for stuff that I don't even walk out the hospital with? You don't have that conversation until you start talking insurance.
The answer is greed. There's a simple answer to that. It's greed. It doesn't cost that much. It doesn't cost them that much. It costs them a fraction of what they charge you for these services and for some of the medications and things that they give you. But it's also, again, so the rich can get richer. But when you start having these types of conversations, and I didn't get a chance to say this in the last segment, but I did want to say it. I'm thankful that I have this now. Is when you get into these types of conversations, particularly when you're talking about Democrats, and Kamala Harris says this, when you start to question these things, then people come at you with socialists, Marxists, communists, because we live in a capitalistic society and capitalism equates with greed, right? That greed and capitalism are greed is good, right, in a capitalistic system.
Gordon Gekko. Yep.
And so these are the dicey conversations that if you want to try to have them politically, again, those are the labels that you're going to get tagged with as a Democrat if you try to have these conversations that everybody knows is true.
Right. Right.
But when you start talking about it, that's what you get hit with politically, and you got to understand who's behind it. And Democrats are complicit in this too sometimes. Look, big pharma, the health insurance providers, all of these people spend millions on lobbyists. They donate to politicians. They do all of this stuff so that they can maintain their space. And both parties are complicit in it, right? And to a degree. And that's what makes it very difficult.
Very interesting. So let's move on. Let's talk about our new vice president-elect. His mother made an appeal to the council up in Middletown. That's the hometown of J.D. Vance. As I've come to understand just through reading an article or two this past week, she, along with J.D. Vance's sister, I believe, still live in that area. But she went to the council and made an appeal that they put up some type of signs to recognize her son's accomplishment of becoming the new vice president-elect. She met with some pushback. There was at least one member of the council who said, and I'm paraphrasing loosely, like, well, yeah, he won, but let's wait and see what he actually does. Like, if he goes forward with some of these kooky ideas like mass deportation, we might feel differently about putting up a sign in Middletown. But fair is fair. He is the president-elect. I want to know what you think. Should they put up a sign in Middletown to celebrate or at least acknowledge the fact that J.D. Vance is now the president-elect or vice president-elect?
So I'll go first on this, being a Middletown native. I'm from Middletown.
Oh, are you?
Like
Okay,
J.D. Vance. Yeah. So
I think they ought to put up a sign honoring Kevin.
Exactly.
You know what?
Not Vance. That's
my mom never went down to city council and petitioned for that. So God rest her soul.
I'll go down. I'll bring it up.
Middletown is a prideful community. They're very proud of people who come out of there who have achieved great things. They're known for a lot of sports personalities who came out of there. Jerry Lucas in basketball, Chris Carter in football. There are a few others, Clarence Page, who worked for years as a columnist for the Chicago Tribune.
I love Clarence Page.
Yeah, I could go down the list of notable Middletonians who that community is very who's very, very proud of. In fact, the football stadium there, the field is named after Chris Carter there. So
well deserved.
Yeah. So I kind of agree with what both sides have said. I think there should be an acknowledgement. Look, being elected vice president of the United States is no small thing. There aren't many cities and towns in the country that can say that. I mean, in fact, I wouldn't even say that there are 47 places, because there may be some places where a couple of people have come out of the same place. So there are very few places that can lay that claim to fame, and sort of holding that position. So it's definitely something that should be acknowledged and recognized. I understand where people are saying, hey, let's wait a minute. Let's see what he does. Let's see what the legacy winds up becoming, how he does. So maybe let's wait and see at the end of 4 years and do something big. I also kind of understand that thought process as well, because you don't know, how things are going to turn out there. But I would say that I would not see a problem with it. I would understand it, particularly in that community. And it would be an honor that would be well deserved for somebody who's from there, who has accomplished, obviously, this, regardless of how you feel about his politics.
I feel the same way. Like, I feel like if this is like standard for, how this goes down, it's not that big of a deal. I think that, if later on down the line that the community petitions to have it removed, then that's a whole, conversation that's worth having later on. But at the moment, it don't make a difference. Like, I know plenty of people who hated Reagan, but I drive Ronald Reagan Highway all the time. So like I hate it every time. It don't make a difference. It's just a name or an acknowledgement of holding a very big public office. it don't really change the fact that what he does in that office may or may not align with our own personal views. You accomplished something, and I get that. It's like somebody winning a sports competition, and then you saying, well, let's see what they do after, after this victory. Let's see, what kind of a athlete they are afterwards. It don't matter. They won.
Yeah, you know what? Let's be honest here. This is just my personal opinion. And I don't know JD Vance's mother, but just looking at it from my opinion, if I'm cynical or whatever, I'll eat that. It is what it is. But this has nothing to do with JD Vance. This is about her. She wants to drive around the streets of Middletown and be Big Mama, blaring Lotto in the background. And she wants to look at it. It's about her. And then she can go to the grocery store and she'll take pictures of it and put it on Facebook and all this kind of stuff. So
what can you blame her?
Yeah, that's what mom's supposed to make. It's like Biggie said. It's like Biggie said.
If my son ever becomes president or if my son becomes mayor, you better believe I am putting that I'm getting a bumper sticker. It's gonna be all over everything. You ain't gonna make me shut up about my son becoming mayor. Imagine if my son becomes vice president of the United States of America. I'm not shutting up about that.
You know what? I mean, of course you're right. I just don't want to admit it because I don't like JD Vance and his politics. Let me be honest with you. So it's that part of me that's resisting this. But if we're being fair, everything you guys just said is 100% on point. Put it up. It is an accomplishment. It says something about Middletown. They should be proud of their hometown son. And depending on what he does, maybe they put up a bigger sign. Like if he really comes through for the people, put up a bigger sign. But yeah, they should put up something so that JD Vance's mama can be Big Mama around Middletown. Y'all have caused a problem in Middletown that because you don't live there, you're not going to have to deal with. I'm just going to say it right there. Phil, what's your take on it?
Well, Nathan, not to minimize your choice of topics, to be honest, I couldn't care less.
That's fair. That's fair.
Now, I will throw one point out, which is one needs to be careful about naming things after people who are still with us. Do we still have Pete Rose Way in Cincinnati? Do we still have that? Or okay, all right. Yeah. Well, my recollection is I think that was enacted before certain facts came to light. So that's just something to be careful about.
Yeah. Okay. I think, it depends on what you do and what the gesture is. I mean, like if you've got a sign out there that says, hey, the home of Vice President JD Vance, there are all sorts of reasons why as a community you might want to do that. I mean, look, we may not care for JD Vance's politics, but there's 77 million people that did. And if that's one more thing that can draw, tourists or people to Middletown to come see the community, experience it, I think it would be a mistake by the city not to do that. I think it would be a mistake by the city not to draw attention to where he grew up and where he went to high school. And it's a tourism thing. It's a draw to your community, regardless of how you might feel about it. I think it's a good idea for the city to be able to do that. And I think a small sign like that for now would be acceptable and understandable, and then you see what he does. And if he merits something greater, like a street named after him or, a wing of the high school or something like that, then you can move to that later on down the line. But I think something acknowledging that that's his hometown, a sign or something of that would certainly be appropriate.
Where does it stop? Next, they'll say his mother will offer up the idea of just changing the name of Middletown. Let's call it Vancestown.
Hold it. I think it should be called Aldridge Town. That's my
Aldridge Town.
Hey, I like Kevin's suggestion where he said, if you saw his comment, he said home of the owner of the Ohio Kings. I like that. I'm for anybody who wants to get that petition drive going. I'm with you on that.
Thumbs up on that one, huh? Well, from one mother of a conservative to another, Pete Hegseth's mother went on Fox News. See, that's the only reason why I brought it up, just to get back to your point, Phil. I want to talk about Pete Hegseth. So Pete Hegseth's mother went on Fox News this week and made a desperate appeal, probably to a party of one or maybe a couple of Republican senators. Now, Pete Hegseth has been nominated by Trump to be the Secretary of Defense, the SecDef, which is kind of cool, sec def, which is a huge job. But all these allegations have come out about him, his drinking, alleged rape, paying off people that accused him of sexual abuse. And she went on there in a desperate attempt to try to save his candidacy for this position. And I want to get you guys' thoughts about it. Like, everything we've heard about this guy this past week is, should Trump go ahead with this nominee, or is it time to get somebody else to be the Secretary of Defense?
I don't think Trump is going to be the guy. Like, I think he's not going to be the one to remove him from that. Now, we might hear in like a couple days to a week or two that Pete had this change of heart and is removing himself from the running or whatever. Like, we have a couple other people that he's put in place, but I don't think that Trump is going to be the one, because he can't take having that image out there that he made a wrong choice or that he did something wrong or that he has to take some kind of accountability for something that he's done. It's not going to be Trump the one to do it. It's going to be quietly a conversation between either Trump or somebody on his camp and somebody on Peter Hegseth's camp, and they're going to be like, hey, we need you to go ahead and step back so we can pick somebody else. It's never going to be a public, it's never going to be a public denouncing from Trump or anybody in his immediate, camp or anything like that. But I also think that, like, I don't think that it would be beneficial to Hegseth to pull himself away, because I think that he's going to want to ride that coattail like for this next 4 years. I think that because so much of his nefarious behavior has been put on Jump Street, he probably won't be able to go back to whatever he was doing before, or be at peace with whatever position he held before. So it's kind of a catch-22 at this point. I think if anything changes in that vein, though, it's not going to be Trump kind of getting that ball, rolling or whatever. It's going to be either a quiet conversation, or he just going to have a change of heart and be like, yeah, I'm tired of y'all in my business. I'm done.
You think we'll see the same situation we saw with Matt Gaetz, right?
Absolutely.
With Matt Gaetz, yeah. I think you're on point. I think you're on point with that. Yeah.
I think it'll become apparent if he doesn't have the support, because what Donald Trump doesn't want to have happen is for him to go through a process. Like the Gaetz situation avoided the Republicans having to make a vote that they were probably going to have to make. And so that's why Gaetz stepped aside. I think something very similar will happen with this guy if it becomes apparent that he's not going to get the support. And I don't think he will. I think that, a guy who has come out and said that women should not serve in the military, and you have, female senators who served in this military who've got to vote for him. That's just I don't see how you cross that Rubicon, so to speak. So I think he's done. I think it's just a matter of time before he slides on out of the way and somebody else comes in. And I'll just say for Raven, even if Trump did have to come out and ask him to step down, Donald Trump's never going to acknowledge that. You remember last time around, he hired out, hey, we only hired the best people. And he had to get rid of, like 3/4 of the people that he hired. And it wasn't because he made bad choices. They were just terrible at the job. And it's like, no, he did, without ever accounting for him only hiring the best people. And now you got to fire and get rid of all of these people because they were terrible. I thought you were only hiring the best. So that's what Donald Trump does. He will never, even if you caught him dead to rights, he's never going to admit that he made a bad.
In no way will he ever put himself in position to have to take accountability.
Right. Yeah. So just get that up. I mean, I think our pursuit of Donald Trump accountability, you just got to bury that. You never gonna get that from him. Yeah. So it's a fool's errand to even expect or think that you're ever gonna get that.
Well, the Democrats should do it publicly, like the Republicans do. When the Democrats make a mistake, the Republicans seize upon it and they never let it go. They just keep hitting it and keep hitting it and keep hitting it. And before you know it, people are like, oh, I kind of feel this way. That's what the Democrats should do. Keep bringing it up and keep bringing it up and keep bringing it up and force it into the consciousness of the electorate. And maybe it'll stick and maybe it won't stick. But I want to know, Raven, what do you think when you hear that this man doesn't believe that women should be in combat?
Can I say something quick before you get to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll come to you after that. Go right ahead, Phil.
No. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Well, first of all, Stephen Colbert was talking about this particular thing, and he was referring to the people that Trump has hired as the liquor cabinet. But what I think is kind of interesting, if you listen to what Hegseth has been saying in the last couple of days, he's now making it as a comeback thing. In other words, he's now talking about I'm a new man sort of thing. Okay, well, the question is, are you saying that you used to be a drunk and you used to be a womanizer? Are you saying that? Or are you saying I've never been? Because if you're going to picture yourself as a man who's overcome all these things, then you got to admit at least to what you did before. I think another point that's being lost here, aside from his womanizing, his drinking, and messing up those businesses, losing all that money, he is not qualified to be Secretary of Defense. That's more than anything else. I mean, this is not a general. This is not a guy who's ever had command of thousands or hundreds of soldiers or employees. He was in the military, had a distinguished record, and he's a talk show host. He in no way has qualifications, even without the drinking and everything. He is not qualified to be Secretary of Defense.
Wait. What are you trying to say, Phil? You trying to say because you're a talk show host that doesn't qualify you to do any and every job that might come your way? What are you trying to say, man?
Yeah, exactly.
I take exception to that.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Nathan, before you flip it to Raven with that question, I did just want to follow up on something that Phil said, and this can't be mistaken. It's like, so think about this as we parse out Hegseth, that's his name, right? Hegseth, how you pronounce it. As we're parsing up his life about him being a womanizer, having a drinking problem, being bad at running organizations into the ground. I always say this, as we crucify these other people for those same manners, remember that these are the same credentials that your president-elect of the United States has. And so it's not too much of a stretch for him to think, hey, the people said I'm good. What issue do y'all got with Hegseth? Hey, I wasn't really qualified to be president of the United States. Y'all are making me. I don't understand what all the hubbub is about. Y'all gave me a shot, get this guy a shot. Y'all gave me 2 shots, as a matter of fact. So that's what I find. That's what I find hilarious in a sad way about the conversation that we have right now is that, yes, Secretary of Defense is a very important position. It's over our military. We should be concerned about it. But when your commander-in-chief is just as sketchy, what are we really talking about?
Right, exactly. But to Raven, to you, so as a female, when you hear that this man who's going to run the military potentially doesn't believe that women should be in combat, how does that hit you?
It's interesting. I decided a very long time ago that I have no interest in the military because I am not cut out for that. But that was a personal decision that I made based on what I know about myself. I do have military family. And so I understand outside of just like the desire to be part of something greater than yourself. I see all the Army commercials about, the togetherness and the oneness that comes with being in the Army and all these things. But a lot of people do also get involved in the military to support themselves, to support their families, to finance their education. So I think that if those are your reasons for being part of the military, then it might not affect you as much. But I think for a woman who has, career goals in the military, who wants to see a certain level of advancement or promotion in the military, this provides her with a very big problem. I think when this first broke, I asked on Lincoln Show, can a woman still kind of rise up in the ranks if she doesn't see combat? And it was explained to me, well, yeah, it would be very difficult for her to do so, but she could still achieve that. But I'm not okay with that concept. Like, it is already I'm just going to keep it honest as a woman. It's already difficult for women to go into an industry of any kind and kind of get a fair shake of elevation and promotion when you are walking into rooms that are predominantly male led or male ran or that's any industry. And so I'm 100% sure that in the military, when you start putting up these kind of unnecessary roadblocks and you put people in positions of power who have this idea or this mindset that women aren't even supposed to be in the room, or women aren't even supposed to be, have access to this specific portion of this job, it's misogyny. It's misogyny in the most simplest form. It's another misogynist in a position of power who is going to make it his responsibility to make it hard for women to excel and advance in the field. And it's unfortunate. like I said, outside of you know, all of those things that come with being a military person that I've decided for myself is not for me. What strikes me about it is just we have yet another misogynist in a position of power who is going to make life for a lot of women very difficult, and I hate that for them.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Michael asked a question: should women be enlisted in a draft for combat roles? And I want to answer that question because that's the core of it, right? Like, one question we could get from this with Pete Hegseth is, should women be in combat roles? I would say absolutely. Anybody who believes that a woman should not be in a combat role, all you need to do is come with me one day and be around me when my wife gets really, really mad, and she will scare the hell out of you. There is no
but
person on earth.
She has good reason probably to be mad.
There is no human being on this earth that I'm more afraid of than my wife when she gets upset. Absolutely. Women can do whatever it takes in combat, a woman can do. I've got no problem. I would have full confidence with a woman who's been fully trained, just like I would have full confidence with a man who's been fully trained for a combat position. So I have no reservation whatsoever
don't put
about
me in combat. Like everybody, all other women, y'all got it. Don't put me in combat because I am not. I am not the girl to go to.
But there's a lot of men who feel the same way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of men who feel the same way. So it's not just a female thing. That's just your personality and who you are.
Yeah. I think anybody who wants to fight and defend this country that is of age and that can meet the requirements that the military has, to be able to, look, you don't want to put people out there who are not in shape, who don't have the ability, to be effective, soldiers. I think that sets them up for bad situations. And I think it sets the people that they're next to up for bad situations. But any woman that can meet the requirements, or anybody who can meet the requirements, who wants to fight and defend the country, should be allowed to do that without question.
Yeah. Well, let me play a clip for you. I got the last topic, and it's a local topic, and it has to do with homelessness in city of Cincinnati. And there was a local news report, and a member of city council is asking for a report on homeless encampments. And I saw just a clip of this on social media, and this council person says something it just kind of stuck me as wrong. And I want you guys to take a look at it and tell me if you pick up on it the same way I do. So check this out.
The president of the Cincinnati Police Union is saying that officers cannot do their jobs to dismantle those camps. Well, new at 5:30, one Cincinnati council member wants to know how widespread the homeless encampment issue is throughout the city. This as the president of the Cincinnati Police Union is saying that officers cannot do their jobs to dismantle those camps. Our Mike Schell spoke with both Jeff Cramerding and Cincinnati Police Union President Ken Kober.
City Councilman Jeff Cramerding says he will introduce a resolution calling on the city to do a study and report on homeless encampments in the city parks and under bridges.
If somebody's sleeping along I-75, for example, that's one thing. But if somebody's sleeping in our park where people bring their children to play, that's another thing, and we need to reduce that.
There has been some speculation that a homeless encampment could be responsible for the 471 Big Mac Bridge fire last month, which has led to concerns about where homeless people in the city are staying. However, investigators still have not released what caused the fire.
What I can say about the 471 bridge is the Cincinnati Fire Department has asked council not to speculate, so I'm honoring that request. I am told that a press conference will be forthcoming later this week, early next week.
Last summer, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that it is not cruel or unusual punishment for a city to punish someone for sleeping in a public place.
I happen to disagree with that Supreme Court ruling, but did you guys catch it? So he asked this question, and I'm sure there was more to the interview, but that's what they played. He's like, well, if somebody's sleeping under a bridge on 75, that's cool. But if a homeless person is sleeping in a park and people are there with their families, that's a problem. And I'm like, what's the problem with that? It's a park.
Because you can see that. Because you can see that homeless person in that encampment in the park with people who have children. And because the assumption is that homeless people are these nefarious, bad people who have no morals, who have no respect for the law or for authority, who will go out of their way to target you and your children if you see them. That's what he meant. Without saying the words, that's what he meant. And that's how a lot of people feel. He's playing on that idea, that mindset that a lot of people do carry when it comes to those who are unhoused, which is that these are people who have rejected society. And so therefore they have they don't have the same moral compass as you and I, or they don't have the same respect for other people's rights and property as you and I, which is not the case. Most of these people are just on hard times. They are much like ourselves, who it was one paycheck too far away from the next one, and they lost out on their ability to house themselves. And it's sick and it's disgusting.
I cannot agree with you more.
Well, let me say this. Let me say this. I think that I don't disagree with everything that Raven said, but I do think that it is somewhat a little bit more complicated. And just as I was saying with the Trump voters earlier, you can't lump everybody into one basket when you're talking about people who are homeless. However, there are very real cases where amongst the homeless population, you have people who have mental health issues. You have people who are returning citizens who may have been, released from prison or jail. Nathan, you can shake your head, but this is the reality. We're talking about, I'm not saying everybody in the homeless population is this, but there are people in that population.
Yeah, but there's people in that population everywhere.
If you've ever walked around downtown, and I've worked downtown for probably 2 decades, and while it doesn't bother me, I've seen instances where you've had homeless people who have aggressively approached people on the street asking for money. I've seen people who've had mental health issues who are walking down the street and they're yelling and they're talking and they've scared the hell out of somebody who's walking down the street. Here's what I'm saying. These are real things that happen. And because that doesn't mean that I'm insensitive to people who are homeless or whatever, but I also see the interactions and something there has to be some way that's being dealt with that, because there is the very real reality that there are a lot of people who are disturbed by that, who are not going to bring their kids around downtown, who are not going to bring their kids to parks in certain places because they don't want to deal with that. Okay, now that's just the reality. And that's not to say that we should treat those folks insensitively or we shouldn't come up with solutions. But we can't sit here and pretend like that type of stuff doesn't happen and people don't have a right. I mean, look, if you out at the park trying to have a day and somebody with a mental health issue roll up on you aggressively and scare your kids, you're going to have a problem with that. That's just facts.
Jeff Cramerding is dead wrong. Jeff Cramerding is dead wrong. He was dead wrong in what he said and how he said that. All he did was to further target and vilify people who are unhoused. You got rapists, people who are returning citizens. You got people that got mentally ill who are living in homes right now. You got people that go to jobs every day. That's that are a bigger threat to me and my family.
Yeah, but you know what, you said it, Nathan. They're in their house. They're in their house. Out of the way. They're not interacting with the public. They're not interacting with the public.
They are interacting with the public. They have to leave their house every day and go to work. They're interacting with the public.
Yes, they're walking around.
Okay, but look, if they're going to work, there are rules. You can't just go to work and have a mental health outbreak in the middle of your workplace and not get dealt with.
Yes,
you think they're not going to deal with that?
You have people that have gone to jobs and have caused mass shootings on their jobs and killed coworkers.
Okay. All right.
Jeff
and what happens when that happens, Nathan? What happens when that happens? Most of those workplaces increase security. They do a whole lot of other things. They change policies. They do a whole lot of other things to make sure that doesn't happen.
But that's not the point. The point is, Jeff Cramerding just vilified.
You don't like what Jeff Cramerding said. That's the point. You don't like how he said it.
It's not about what I don't like.
It doesn't have anything to do with the validity of what he said.
This man is an elected official, and he just on a local news broadcast, he just vilified all unhoused people with no distinction because of his fears and his problems. I have been in the park with my son. It just happened like maybe about a month ago. We was at a park in Coreyville and there was a homeless dude over there. And my son asked me and I had to tell him, I had to have a conversation about people who are unhoused and people that get down their luck. And we just kept on playing. This man didn't do nothing to us. He went and got some water. He was working out and he went back and fell asleep on the bench. And that was it. Jeff Cramerding was dead wrong. And the only reason I didn't try to get him on hot mic is I didn't really understand what he said. I didn't really see the article until I sent it to you guys, which is like within the last 24 hours. I am most certainly going to reach out to him and try to get him on for next week so I can tell him directly, bro, you was dead wrong for that. Or maybe he needs to clarify it. Maybe there was more to the interview that we just didn't get, which is could happen. But somebody needs to hold him accountable for what he just said. And I'm that guy.
And it's worth noting that there needs to be, for the comment that he made, there needs to be, if what he meant is what Kevin is saying that he meant, he needed to say that. He didn't need to just to paint that so broadly when you are talking about that demographic of people. If you're specifically talking about that demographic of people, but also within that, the people who have mental ill health issues, or the people who are recently released back into society, then sure, that's a conversation that you need to have about that and how you deal with that and how you deal with that issue. But just to broadly paint and say that we don't want none of y'all down here around these people with these families, that's problematic. That's problematic.
Hey, Phil, we haven't heard from you on this.
When I was on city council, just to show things change but things remain the same, I put together, because we had tons of complaints from business owners downtown about these guys, as Kevin said, driving business away. And I put in this proposal, which I think we passed, I can't even remember, frankly. It was basically to go in and, frankly, get the homeless people out, but provide them the opportunity for beds and meals and stuff like that. I think at whatever's the drop-in center and other places. Okay. We held a public hearing on this. And first of all, I've never seen a more packed public hearing than this. And there were numerous business owners from downtown that said these homeless guys were aggressively, as Kevin said, moving toward or interacting aggressively with their customers. It was driving business away. I'll tell you something else kind of interesting. One of my lead witnesses for my proposal was, I believe his name was Steve Gibbs, who at the time was the CEO of the Free Store. And you'd think a guy who is head of that would be very sympathetic to those guys. Not in the least. He agreed 100% with the proposal. And he felt that these guys were actually a danger, okay, to the citizens. So, I'm not saying it's not an easy issue to deal with, but I think actions have to be taken, or else basically you're going to drive. I mean, maybe you, Nathan, are just not, you're okay with it, but the vast majority of people are not comfortable with people aggressively approaching them for money.
I'm just not scary. That's all it is. People aggressively came at me. I tell them no and keep on moving, and that's it.
But that's you, though. You can't say what everybody's reaction to a situation should be. And when you're a city official,
I was saying my reaction.
But that's what I'm saying. But as an elected official, you got to look at the situation as bigger than that. You've got to think about the whole. And the reality is there are laws against loitering. There are laws against trespassing. You can't just come out and hang out in front of, somebody's store, kicking it, drinking, having a good time, doing whatever you want to do all day. A business owner let me finish. A business owner would be well within their right to ask you, hey, leave the premises, leave my business. You're disrupting. We had this conversation about the kids who were hanging out around downtown. Look, it's all cool until it's your business that they're
that's loitering in front of a business. That's not being inside of a park.
No, a park is the same way. A park is kind of like a place where people go. There's no question about, hey, if I'm just sitting around and hanging out at a picnic table, but if I'm tossing up, if I'm laying out a blanket, if I'm sleeping if I'm defecating and urinating on the premises, like those are different things that we can't pretend don't happen and that are not health and safety risks and things that we shouldn't be concerned about. I think you got to get away from this issue of, because I'm saying that there need to be standards that we have, doesn't mean that I'm insensitive to people who are homeless. It means we got to figure out that there are better ways to deal with this. How do we put these people in the best situations where they're safe, where they're not exposed to the elements, where they're healthy? I know for a fact one of the problems that you have with returning citizens is that, like, if you have a past criminal record, a lot of these shelters won't take you in if you're a man. That's a problem. Right? Because if I'm a returning citizen who has nowhere to return to, and I can't even go into a local homeless shelter because there are rules that preclude me from getting in there because I have a past criminal record, like maybe I don't need to be at the park if I can get in there. Right. And so these are the types of things that, as I hope the city is studying it, is not just about where these encampments are at, but how are our systems working that actually create situations where people don't have to be out on the street.
No, I think you're wrong on that. It is about where they're out. It's all about out of sight, out of mind. We're okay with homeless people as long as we don't see them.
Yeah. So all of those mental health issue having people and all of those returning citizens that you don't want to see in your public park, he just said on TV, I don't care if they're over there by 75. They can be over there. They just can't be over here in the park where
you can play next to traffic.
Where we can lay eyes on them and see them. That's what he said. And so I think we kind of getting away from what the issue is, which is he's not saying that he even wants to help those people. He's just saying, I want them somewhere where we cannot see them.
That's exactly what he said. That's how I read it. And he needs to be challenged on that. And he might come, hopefully he will come on Hot Mic. I'll reach out to him today. And maybe he'll clarify. He's like, hey, Nate, here's what I really meant. Yeah, I saw that. You did it. Okay, great. But somebody needs to challenge him like, yo, bro, what you just said on this news conference don't work. These are real people. These are people human just like us. They may be unhoused. They may not have money. They might even be voters, but they are still human beings. And we should talk to them about that. And that's the first step on, I think, addressing our homeless situation is these are human beings.
I don't think anybody sees it that way, Nathan, but I think there's the very real reality. And I think, again, when you're talking about bringing people downtown for tourism, for events, businesses that are trying to bring in customer traffic.
We're talking about the park.
Okay, I'm just saying this is an example. You guys are talking about out of sight, out of mind. Yes, the park is one example, but I'm sure we would be having the same conversation about many other places based on the stance that what I'm hearing you and Raven say is like, hey, they're homeless, they're down on their luck, so just let them be wherever they are. Just leave them alone, right? And I just don't think that's right. I don't, and it doesn't mean that I'm insensitive to homeless people and people who are down on their luck, but I just don't think homeless people should be able to have free reign to be wherever they want to be because we don't.
So we do though. We can go to the park right now. I've been at the park all day long. What Jeff Cramerding said if Jeff Cramerding said, if we have homeless people at the park while people are there with their families, the good people, that's some kind of a problem.
So let me ask you this, Nathan, and I'm just using a hypothetical. Yeah, okay, this is because I know you're gonna say, "Oh, that don't happen," but I'm just using this as an example because it could
take us away from the core. I am going to say that, but go right
ahead. So let's just say you at the park. Now, if a homeless person is living in the park, then they're doing things that people do when they live somewhere. So let's just say a homeless person is at a park and they got to go to the restroom, and so you're sitting there with your kid. And a homeless person just decide, hey, you know what? Boom, butt naked right there in front of your little boy or your little girl. I'm about to urinate or take a dump, or maybe I'm going to clean myself up a little bit because this is where I live. How are you going to respond to that? Do you think that's cool?
This is your argument? Yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah, I do.
Okay,
I wouldn't have a big problem with that.
You and I are very different. And I guarantee if
that's not what Jeff Cramerding said.
If you survey Cincinnati and
you're trying to make Jeff Cramerding what he said sound more palatable. That's
what I'm simply trying to do is be real. And you're talking about ideology.
We're going to be real.
I'm talking about real and how real people respond to that. And that's what Cramerding is talking about.
Kevin, let's respond to what Jeff Cramerding really said. What he really said is that if you have homeless people in the park, while there are people with families, that's a problem. That's what he said.
Yes.
He didn't say nothing about
I think the majority of people in Cincinnati would agree with that.
Just being there.
I think the majority of people in Cincinnati would agree with that. If I'm being real, I think the majority of people
would not be the first time. A majority of people used to agree with slavery. Doesn't mean they were right. Yeah, it would not be the first time that a majority of good people got it wrong.
If you want to compare homelessness to slavery, I'll let you run with
that. No, I'm comparing taking the majority as if that's some type of virtue.
No, I think they're right. Okay, it's not just this is how they feel. I think they're right. I don't think families have to when they go to a park, have to, watch some guy take a dump or whatever.
Oh, are you going to play this game? Are you going to play Kevin's game?
And I'll guarantee you,
You gonna play Kevin's game? He got you.
Yeah, I'll play Kevin's game.
That's not even the issue. So that's
Kevin's
called
game.
a straw man, ladies and gentlemen. That's called a straw man argument.
Hey, listen, Nathan,
you fell for that.
You've already been accused on this show of using analogies that are totally inappropriate. So you can't throw that back at us.
I was 100% right on that. But no, that's a straw man argument.
Let's be clear. I don't want to go to a public park and see nobody doing their business just all willy-nilly. I'm very people joke.
Now it's 3 against 1.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Because let me explain
Raven
myself.
is about to make my point. Thank you, Raven.
No, let me explain myself. I don't necessarily want to see a complete stranger's genitals in a public park. I don't care if you're unhoused or not. I don't want to see it. But at the same time, we are making the assumption that homeless people ain't got no common sense. Most of the homeless people that I've come across have been very that's the thing too. I've never had a bad experience with a homeless person. Most of the homeless people that I've interacted with have been either left me the hell alone or been very respectful. If they were decided to ask me for some money or something, they've been very respectful. So maybe just anecdotally, I don't share that experience of being fearful of homeless people. I don't have that natural fear that some of y'all have. I just don't.
You know what?
If
we're gonna go with this whole bathroom in public thing, why are we assuming that all
homeless people are
ripping it out in front of everybody in a public park? Most parks have bathrooms.
Right.
It's not about a fear.
And they're open 24/7.
It's not about a fear. It's about a reasonable expectation of what you expect to see and experience. Again, like I said, I've worked downtown for 2 decades. So I've seen probably almost everything that you could see in relation to what homeless people around downtown do. Getting out of the office, walking around downtown, just seeing how it is. And I see the things that, make your heart go out to people who are homeless. And then I've also seen some things that I can say, I understand why if I live out in the suburbs or if I'm from a certain place and I come downtown and I go to the ATM to get some money, and as soon as I turn around, there's somebody right there who's hitting me up and they're saying, don't tell me you ain't got no money because I just seen you draw some out. Like,
you say that ain't none of your business and you walk away.
I had the exact same thing happen to me, and that's what I did.
But again, is that something that you should have to deal with? And is that something as a city that turns people off? You feel that again, Nathan. You feel that way.
Living in the big city.
But I guarantee you, the majority of people do not, and that's what, as council people, they're going to respond to.
The majority of people have been wrong in our society, in our history.
I'm just telling you what the
that's not a great way of looking at it.
I just want to say, because I think
this is all about. Hold on one second, Raven. This is just the life of living in a city. When you live in the big city,
and that's why people don't live in the city.
You're going to interact with homeless
people. Tell you they don't live in the city.
That's just living in the big city. When you go to the
that's why people tell you they don't live in the city,
and they have the right to move.
That's why the city's struggling with tax dollars
and they have the right to move.
That's why you got neighborhoods in decline right now.
That's not why you have neighborhoods in decline.
It's part of the reason.
That's not part of the reason.
People don't want to live in the city.
But I want to say this. I want to say this to Kevin's point. I'll even take it further than that, Kevin, because you say that's just part of what comes with living in the city. I'll say that's just part of what comes with living in a capitalist society, period. If you are somebody who is not unhoused, you live in an area where it is very easy to become an unhoused person, you are going to run into that demographic of people no matter where you are. I work downtown as well, Kevin. I'm right here in the studio off of Central Avenue. When I leave here, when I'm done my work day and I go do some grocery shopping at the Court Street Kroger, it is a gang of people down there who I can make the assumption are unhoused, who will ask you if you're not walking fast enough, hey, you got a couple dollars you can spare me or whatever that may. I can't feel no way about that because I live in a city that has an unhoused person problem. We have an issue in this city that we don't have enough resources for unhoused people. So unfortunately, I'm going to come in contact, or not even unfortunately, consequently, because it's not unfortunate. It just is what it is. Consequently, I live in a city that has a problem with housing people. So I'm going to run into unhoused people. That's just what that is. And I myself don't feel like I shouldn't have to deal with that. I'm fortunate enough to have to deal with that in the way that I deal with it. I'm fortunate enough to not be one of those unhoused people who are asking people for money in front of Kroger.
The issue that we should be arguing about, and this is my whole problem with the homelessness debate, is the argument should not be about the right to somebody to sleep in a park or under a bridge. The conversation needs to be what Raven just said, is the conversation needs to be, how are we setting up more housing so that you don't have a situation where that is the choice that people have, that you have more shelters where that isn't the choice that people have. It's like, if you really want to be sensitive to the homeless people, I'm not going to fight for you to sleep under a bridge or in a park. I'm going to fight for you to have a roof over your head.
Absolutely.
Like, that's the argument. That's the problem that I have with the argument that we're making. It's like, we're arguing for people to be able to defecate in public and do all of these different things.
That's your straw man argument. It ain't
That's what this has come down to. So for me, if you're going to
brought that up, nobody else did.
You're going to do a study of homelessness. For me, any study that doesn't wind up with some solutions for what to do with these people is a waste of money.
But now you're changing the conversation. So yeah, the larger conversation is what you just said. But this conversation is about that crazy stuff that Jeff Cramerding just said. That's what this conversation is about.
I tell you, there are probably more people, but there are probably more people who are going to agree with what Jeff Cramerding said that's going to be offended like you.
And I'm sure there was a time when a lot of people thought that black people should have been slaves. So what? It don't matter.
You just keep coming
just
back
because
to that,
a lot of people feel a certain way does not mean that a lot of people are right.
We're talking about the
just
here and
because
now.
a lot of people feel a certain way don't mean that a lot of people are right, Kevin. When we start doing that, just because a lot of people feel a certain way, that means they're right. Oh no. Jeff,
I happen to think on this one, I don't have a problem with what Cramerding said.
Oh, okay, that's part of the conversation. But Jeff Cramerding was dead wrong because, you know, as Raven put it, and I want to make sure I say it again.
At the end of the day, the comment was dehumanizing. That's my only point.
Dehumanizing.
It was dehumanizing.
And let me say this: my son is into basketball. I probably spent, these last 3-4 years, I done spent more time in the summertime at all of the different parks. That was our thing. We went to all the parks, all over the city. I done seen all kind of homeless people. It ain't no problem to me whatsoever. I just keep it moving. I've had people ask me for money. My son has told me to give people money because they were unhoused and needed some help. It's just a conversation for us where I can kind of teach them about society and let them know what his daddy's virtues and values are. It's a non-issue for me, but I'm also a 6'4" black man. So I move a little differently than if I was like a single mother. And I'm sensitive to that. But Jeff Cramerding was dead wrong, and he needs to be called out. And I'm gonna do it. You already know it. As soon as we get out, I can't wait to call this man and try to get him on the show. But again, I'm open to the fact
let me just say,
maybe he has a reasonable explanation.
I hope you will be as courteous and nice to him as I was to Joe Mallory.
You were nice to that was a good conversation, man. Ooh, that was good. Yeah, you were. For sure. That's what Hot Mike's all about. Man, this has been great. I've had a lot of fun today, guys. A lot of fun. Thank you so much for all of your comments and all the people in the audience. At the very end, we like to do something where we allow people to, get it off your chest. Is there anything that perhaps you didn't get a chance to say? Was there something that somebody said earlier where maybe you want to circle back for clarification or just hold somebody's feet to the fire? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Well, Raven, I'll just refer back to one thing. You said in a previous comment that you were in an auto accident. Is that right?
Yeah, around the summertime.
Just want you to know, if you need legal representation, my rates are. Forget it. Sorry. That's not appropriate. I'm sorry.
Hey, Raven, tell people.
Podcast chaser, ambulance chasing the podcast chaser.
That's the second stereotype that's been forced on me in this show. The first was Raven calling me George Soros. Listen, I want you guys, I have a very fragile ego, and I can't take all this name calling. Just want you to know.
Hey, Raven, can you tell everybody when and where they can watch your show?
Actually, you can watch my show every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. right here on 12:30 a.m. The Buzz. And I will be having some interesting conversation tomorrow with some people from the NAACP about this whole redistricting thing with the schools. So I would advise everybody to tune in.
Absolutely. And I will be in the comments. So always a good time. So make sure you check her out on 12:30 The Buzz tomorrow morning. Again, speak now, or Kevin, I just feel like I'm talking to you now. Speak now. I mean, we're going to talk always, but speak now or forever hold your peace, bro. Of course, you don't have to hold your peace.
I just want to say, I always love having Raven on. I think Raven is fantastic. I love the dynamic that she brings to the table, and I enjoy every crew member. But definitely love having her on board. I just want to highlight not something somebody else said, but Mr. Prosser in the chat said something that I thought was so funny that I didn't get to it at the time. But when we were talking about Hegseth and he and his mother coming to his defense, and he was like, it's bad when you a grown ass man and your mama got to come to your defense.
It's a wrap.
I thought that was hilarious and so on point. It's like, yeah, that's a bad thing when your mama got to come to save you. That, yeah. Mr. Prosser, great comment.
Yeah. 100%. That's exactly what I thought when I was watching her on Fox News this week. I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. So yeah, absolutely great point. Raven, Phil, speak now or forever hold your peace. Anybody want to take some shots at Kevin Gordon? He's not here. He can't defend himself. It's a great time to get it in.
I would actually love to hear his thoughts on the whole homeless thing, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, he's planning to be with us next Friday, so we'll pick up back then.
Hey, well, Kevin's got a softer heart than you think. I think Kevin would probably be on. Kevin surprised you every now and again. It's like I think Kevin on that issue would have probably been with you and Raven. I think it would have been 3-on-2 on that one. I think it would have been me and Phil battling the three of you. Kevin, I think we miscast him sometimes because of his Trump comments. I've noticed there have been a few times that I've been more to the right on a subject where we've been talking about it than Kevin has. So he might have surprised us on that.
Yeah, good stuff, everybody. Everybody, great flows, as I put it, great comments, good energy. We had just enough friction, and hopefully people can get something out of it. But again, the whole point of this is to make you think, bringing different sides to the table. Even sometimes we might agree, but we arrive at a conclusion, taking different paths, just to make you think. So if you like this, maybe someone that might like it, just please lift us up. Like and share today's show. You can find us on YouTube at Hot Mic Podcast HQ, as in headquarters. And we're planning to be back with you next week. So pay attention to this page and we'll let you know who, when, and where. So with that, everybody, have a great Friday and a great weekend. And I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, my friend.
Yep, absolutely. Take it easy.